400 campuses. The way that we work as an organization is primarily through campuses joining us as members. And on our website, we have a member hub, and so campuses get access to discounts and direct guidance, leadership trainings, program development guides and manuals. A couple of years ago, in the summer of 2018, we began putting together the Break Free from Plastic Campus Pledge, and I'm going to do a quick overview of that now. I'm sure you all are familiar with this, but the focus of the pledge is broken down into 4 key components. So in the first stage, we want the campus to implement a zero waste task force. In the second stage, we want the campus to identify and eliminate easy disposable products. So this is like plastic bags or styrofoam or things that are relatively easy to eliminate early on and switch over. But steps 3 and 4 are really where it gets kind of complicated. So in step 3, we're looking for the campus to establish the process for what we refer to as a long-term system switch. And I'm going to kind of explain what I mean by that throughout the rest of the presentation. But essentially, the challenge on a college campus is that, this is true for large campuses and small campuses, campuses in rural environments and urban environments. Campuses are often very bureaucratic. So food service facilities can often be run by different entities. So for example, you might have dining halls or some sort of like buffet type system run by a certain entity on campus, like dining. But then you might also have food vendors in athletics facilities. So you might have like food trucks on campus, or you might have catering systems. And those types of systems can be run by different entities. So the challenge on a campus of multiple different entities, is going to be around developing a streamlined system. So, for example, we know that a big problem with disposable plastics is some of the plastics can be recyclable, and some of the plastics can be compostable, and some of them might just be trash. And the average person doesn't necessarily know the difference between these different types of disposables. And so for us, it's all about developing clear communication systems and making it really clear to individuals that like this cup, no matter where you buy it on campus, goes in this bin. And so that might be we switch to reusables, or it might be we switch to, everyone on campus gets switched to compostable products, but we need all of those vendors to switch at the same time. That's what we refer to as a system switch, is ensuring that all the different entities on campus are all using the same products and speaking the same, like developing the same communication strategies for those programs. So step 3, we establish a visioning process to map out a long-term system switch. And then in step 4, we actually implement the system switch. I want to make a quick note that, as we all know, the coronavirus has been a challenge for all of us in the work of reuse and sanitation. Specifically in the United States, we're heading into the summer, so most college campuses are now out of session, and they will be heading back into session in August and September. And right now, we're looking at over 200 campuses that have announced that they plan on bringing students back to campus in the fall. And we've heard from a lot of campuses that they're concerned that when students do come back in the fall, that dining halls and dining facilities will have switched to disposables out of fear related to spreading the coronavirus. So we recently put together this 7-page reusables and sanitation toolkit. It's very US specific. It refers to the US FDA and specific kind of food code things, but I think could be adapted in a more international way if folks are interested in looking at it. But right now we're spending a lot of time helping campuses map out strategies for how to maintain reusable systems during the pandemic. So getting into this kind of bigger picture strategic visioning, we do a lot of work with campuses to help them measure and benchmark and track their progress. And we help them identify these material management scopes, which I'll get into in a second, and figure out what long-term strategic visioning looks like. So about 3 years ago, in the summer of 2017, we had identified about 30 college campuses in the United States that had set goals of achieving zero waste by 2020. And we were concerned that it looked like all of those campuses were on track to miss that goal. We're now here in the middle of 2020, and those campuses have not achieved that goal, so we were correct. And we decided to do a research project 3 years ago to try to figure out why those campuses were likely not going to reach our goal. Like, what was the problem that was leading to that? So our research came up with 3 things. First is that the diversion metric, which is a typical metric that campuses use to communicate their zero waste efforts, doesn't really measure zero waste. Second is that the process of standardization is really important. So we use this phrase that infrastructure change has to precede behavioral change. And for us, what that means is that we see a lot of college campuses focusing on education, teaching people how to properly put certain items in certain bins, but you're teaching people on a broken system. The average person isn't going to bother to try to figure out, is this plastic item recyclable or trash because it's contaminated or compostable, or which bin does it go in? The average person doesn't pay attention that much or care that much, and it's on us to build standardized systems that are really clear in their communication. And then the third is that campus-wide zero waste requires more of a program management reshuffle, and we'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. So speaking to diversion specifically, we released a blog post, and I can share these links in the chat box, called 5 Reasons Why the Diversion Metric Does Not Measure Zero Waste. So y'all are probably familiar that the diversion metric, the typical definition of zero waste is 90% diversion from landfills and incinerators. But our concern with the diversion metric is that diversion specifically measures the items that are yellow in this chart. Diversion measures our efforts to divert materials to recycling and composting and material recovery. And there's a lot of problems with that. The largest being that the measurement doesn't really measure the top 3 parts of the hierarchy. So we're not measuring redesign, we're not measuring eliminating disposable products, we're not measuring reduce or reuse. We're only measuring our efforts to divert, and the more that we do put into recycling and composting, the more that we're rewarded. So it incentivizes recycling, which is not really the goal of a zero waste strategy. So for another example, if you have a college campus that in 1 year has 1,000-ton material output, and then they work through the process of eliminating disposable products, so they reduce materials in all 3 of their streams. Say it's a disposable plastic product, and that product was causing contamination. So it was being recycled, it was being thrown away, and it was being composted. And then as a result of eliminating the disposable products, say switching to a reusable, the campus diversion rate goes down instead of going up. We see this happen a lot with college campuses where they take on efforts to focus on zero waste, and the measurement that they're using to track their progress is actually showing that they're moving backwards when in fact they're moving forwards. So the second finding for us was around standardization, and we use this TED talk by Reusables called How to Motivate Others to Do Good. And basically what he says is, in order to motivate good behavior, to get people to do the right thing, for example, recycling or composting or using reusables, you need to make it as easy as possible for the average person. So right now, our waste systems are incredibly confusing, complicated. They don't make a lot of sense to the average person. And it's on us as kind of people who are working to build better systems to increase the observability of the system, eliminate excuses, meaning no one should be able to say, oh, I didn't know, or I was confused, and clearly communicate your expectations. So we use these bins from UC Berkeley as an example of what that looks like. In this example, you see really clear signage, really clear communication. We like that they have color coding and also shape coding to help people associate certain images and colors and shapes with where the material goes. So the average person can approach the bin, identify what they have in their hand with what is on these images, place the items in the proper bins, and these bins are universal. They're all across campus, and they refer to the materials that are sold in all facilities on campus. And then the third is around management. So college campuses are incredibly bureaucratic. And the challenge that we see a lot is that college campuses solve waste issues in departmental silos. So for example, you might have facilities under one silo, and you might have athletics under another silo, and the library under another, and certain colleges and university services like dining or student life and housing and activities all under different entities. And if we have one of these entities do something like start a compost program, that program is now siloed under one particular unit. And that compost program was not designed with an umbrella management system. So in an ideal world, something like a compost program where there's bins like the ones that I just shared, and those bins are spread all across campus and all facilities, and there's a centralized management of who's in charge of collecting those bins and where does that material go for all different facilities all across campus. We need that umbrella level system management, or else we're going to wind up having these siloed units develop their own initiatives, and smaller units get left in the dust. So the library, for example, which might have a coffee shop, probably won't have the capacity, finances, the logistics, the staffing to build their own compost program. And if they're not folded into the larger system, they're going to be left behind. And we're not going to have a zero waste campus. We're going to have certain entities on campus doing well and other entities on campus not doing well. So for us, we see this as a deep need for campuses to take a step back in their zero waste strategies and figure out what a long-term vision looks like. I'm going to skip this slide. We use the strategy that we've employed in working with campuses is to do what we call mapping out material scopes. So in the example that I'm sharing here, we have two particular scopes that we want to map out. And we want to map out the material flow from start to finish in all of these different types of materials because they all work under the same central system. And then we figure out how does that system apply to all of campus. So in this example, in scope 1, we have hard goods. These hard goods are surplus property and hard to recycle materials. They're materials that the campus purchases and uses. So electronics, furniture, lab equipment, art equipment, vehicles, chemicals, construction and demolition debris. In scope 2, we have soft goods. These are food, single-use materials, and also if those single-use materials are switched to reusables. And that's food waste, disposables, compostables, and reusables. And I'm going to kind of show what I mean by all of this in a minute. So using scope 1 on the left here, you're going to see scope 1 reflected in the next slide. So here you have them on the left. You have your electronics, your furniture, your office supplies, your lab equipment, your vehicles, etc. If you imagine all of these items all across campus and all of your facilities, in your labs, in your campus student activities buildings, in housing and dining, in athletics, all of these facilities all using these materials, so they get used. What we want to see in terms of umbrella level management at campus-wide level management is the following things. We want to see a policy that requires that all staff use a central surplus system. So they have to purchase items from a reuse space, and they have to, once they're done, send those items back to a reuse space. We then want standardized collection systems. So bins all around campus that say, drop off your broken electronics, donate your used items. Clearly communicating what pickup service would look like. So if there's renovation happening on campus, if a staff member breaks their chair or needs a new desk, what would it look like to recycle that item? The logistics, so the collection, where does it come from? Who's in charge of moving it? And then where does it go? So ideally, all of these materials funnel through a central facility. We call them a surplus facility. So in the surplus facility, the items are assessed. Are they ready to be reused on campus or sold? Could they be repaired? Should they be resold off campus? And ultimately, are these items broken? They need to be deconstructed and then sent to hard to recycle material recovery. And so this is what this looks like in a circular system, right? Our goal is to create a circular model, a circular economy inside of our campus. And so everything that you saw on the previous slide is reflected here. You start with your purchasing department, you use the materials. Once they're disposed of, they go through the system. They either are picked up and brought to surplus and brought back into campus, they're sold off campus, they're brought to repair, and they're brought back into the surplus system once they're prepared, they're donated, they're brought to material recovery. So doing the same exercise for scope 2, food, prepackaged food, etc. What we want to see for the campus, so for all vendors, athletics facilities, large events, catering, on-campus dining facilities, all need to be fit under the same umbrella. Under this umbrella, we want to see policies that reduce prepackaged food, eliminate disposable to-go-ware, eliminate disposable dishware. And then once we have that material elimination, we can set up those standardized collection systems. So now we know we need to communicate all across campus that these materials go in this bin. Those standardized collection stations get sent all across campus. We have the collection logistics for where that material ultimately goes. And then we have where does it actually go to? Does it go to industrial composting facilities, waste and recycling, industrial dishwashers to be reused? And now we have the circular economy model, right? So the items are first purchased, they're used, they're either, if you have food for recovery, it goes to a food recovery program. Reusable dishware is brought immediately back into campus. And then you have your standardized collection system for recycling, composting, etc. So I'm going to kind of wrap up here. I'd be happy to share more about what the project looks like and how we do these assessments with campuses. But our summary recommendations are, if you're interested, please explore the Reuse and Sanitation Toolkit, because right now it's difficult to communicate reuse to campuses, and we want to make sure that campuses know that reusables are safe. If you have the capacity to, you could map out your scope 1 and scope 2 materials, both how does it work currently on your campus and what would a vision for what you'd want to see look like in the future. And then develop your campus stakeholders and figure out who touches these systems. Your director of athletics, your director of dining, your director of housing, facilities, grounds and roads, etc. And how do you bring those stakeholders together for strategic visioning exercises to help them understand the need for umbrella level management of these projects? And how do you then communicate those umbrella level needs to campus administrators to begin moving your campus in the direction of a zero waste system? Again, we'd be happy to share more information about what this looks like for us. We call it the Atlas Project. So the Zero Waste Atlas program is a model that we use to work campuses through this process, where we help campuses do these assessments. So that's all. I can stop sharing my screen now, but I look forward to talking with you all and hearing your questions when it's time.
Thanks so much, Alex. So again, if you're interested in Alex's resources, everything is in postlandfill.org, is that correct? And you have to sign up as a member to access their toolkits, and they're free, if I'm not mistaken. They also host their own sessions and webinars, but they work mostly on campuses in the US. Although if you're interested in learning more, you can always email them or try to modify that on your own. And also for their Atlas assessments, you charge a certain amount for that, right? But if you're interested in doing that, Break Free from Plastic is willing to fund your applications to do that if ever you are, through, again, the microgrant application in plastic-free campuses. So yeah, thanks, Alex, for that extensive overview, as extensive as an overview could be. And now I'm going to welcome Doc Betty. Give me a minute. Doc Betty, are you ready? So, Dr. Betty McCann is the first woman to become president of Silliman University, and she's the one who spearheaded their zero waste program in Silliman. They are the first plastic-free university in the Philippines. And so Doc Betty and her team has been the one paving the way for a lot of plastic-free campuses here in the Philippines, and they have outlined all the steps to get there. And Doc Betty will be talking about their journey extensively in a minute. So, Doc Betty, are you able to unmute yourself? Give us a minute. Doc Betty, can you try to speak? Are you able to see the screen, everyone? Okay, thanks. On. Zoom is very complicated. So to everyone asking about the presentation, so this session is recorded and will be posted online. Um, I'm not sure if you'll be handing out copies of this presentation. We'll have to ask Alex and Doc Betty if they do that. Doc Betty, you can start. Hello. We're not able to hear you. Um, Doc Betty, can you try to talk again po? Uh, we're still not hearing you po. There might be a problem with your microphone. Okay, please hold on, everyone. Doc, we still can't hear you po. Okay, so while we're figuring out how to fix our technical difficulties with the next presentation, just so we don't keep Alex awake for longer, if you have any questions for Alex, we can entertain that for the next 5 minutes. Um, you can chat in the group chat. All right, thanks. Oh, sorry, Alex, I keep on muting you. Oh, it seems Doc Betty is able to connect now. Hello, Doc Betty.
Hi, can you
Okay,
hear me?
finally. Alex, do you mind if Doc Betty goes first for
Yeah,
your question and
that's
answer?
great.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually moved to another device. I
Okay.
was using a desktop earlier, so am I on?
Yes, we can hear you. I'll start sharing your screen. Hey, can everybody see the presentation?
What's happening here?
Hello, Doc, you can start na po.
Okay, so, well, a pleasant day, everyone, despite the hiccup that we experienced. Hello, can you see me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay. Well, first of all, let me just say it's quite a challenge. This particular afternoon, there's actually a storm alert where I am, but we're able to maintain our electricity here. So maybe part of the reason is all these technical challenges. First, I must say I'm really grateful for this opportunity to share the path taken by Silliman University towards being a plastic-free community. And as mentioned, I actually took over just less than 2 years ago. And having been designated as the first woman president and knowing that Silliman University is very much into environmental agenda, it just comes naturally for the administration to go into a plastic-free movement here on campus. The slide will show that the Silliman University campus is really beside the sea. And I wonder if that can be seen there, where we are in the central part of the Philippines. We are on a 64-hectare campus, 11,000 students, about 50 countries represented in our programs and events. And I must say that when I joined, there are actually a number of initiatives taken by the students, by the faculty, the staff, and all other members of the campus community. So the challenge really is to ensure, given the mission of the university to promote total human development for the well-being of the environment and society, for us to really show through our actions what would be some indicators of being good and responsible environmental citizens. The next slide will actually show the basic principles that the university adheres to. And in the fourth slide, we can actually see that there indeed are a number of moving parts. As mentioned by Alex himself, he did say about silos in an organization. So I felt that there really is a need for each division. There are three main divisions in our university. We have the academic division, where many of our programs, or most, if not all of our programs, are being offered. But we also have our finance and administration, which takes care of buildings and grounds and the like, and even our own food cafeteria services. Then we also have our development division, also working towards environmental activities. 6 months down the line, meaning sometime in November of 2018, once a committee was formed with members coming from the different divisions of the university, we were able to arrive at a Silliman University environmental principles, policies, guidelines, and best practices. And that is shown in the next slide. And it starts with the basic principles that we believe in, and also identified the different component activities of the university. So if we have to be able to do a breaking free from plastic activity, we have to situate that effort in the zero waste management program of the university. And we have to ensure that that particular activity can be discussed in the teaching component, in our research component, also in our service activities, our worship and fellowship, in our culture and sports, also in our outreach, planning and development, in administration, and in our operations. There are also general policies arrived at that really looks into how we can ensure that we minimize or do away with plastic in our waste prevention and waste management activities, in our green procurement policies, in our food and food waste guidelines, events and festivals, also in our greening of the campus. So environmental guidelines and best practices have been identified and also worked on by the different units. I mentioned buildings and grounds, our academic departments, our administrative and support service units, our student affairs, student government, student housing and residences, in our food services, in our college of agriculture for our organic fertilizer, in our elementary and high school department, and in our information and dissemination unit. I'll just flash a number of those slides related to initiatives on campus towards zero waste, which really can identify with a number of those strategies previously presented. So under the zero waste management, we have there no to plastics. We make sure that our own students are really using the bins properly, that we are also able to develop advocates of zero waste management, and therefore engage in being free from plastic here on campus. We also have celebrations of the Zero Waste Month, which was actually last January, but we know that zero waste has to be practiced every day, but that allows us to drum up interest in being part of this advocacy for zero waste. So we have our own students being encouraged to bring their own reusables like the wooden cutleries, or for them to really engage in working with people in the community. Following the information education campaign of the university, our own students have actually developed an infographics, and this one actually presents a location guide so that students will know exactly where the bins are or where the water fountains are, so that they can refill their water bottles, and also some of the places where they can have food stops. So we have a number of materials made visible on campus, like saying single-use plastics are prohibited. Here in the Philippines, the use of sachets is actually very common in the larger community, and that also has to do with the economics of, you know, buying or purchasing goods. So if our students, for example, need shampoo or conditioner, they don't have to buy the big bottles, they may just use a sachet. But this time, there are measures undertaken so that our own students will not be using single-use plastics. So we identify which ones are prohibited on campus. One example in the next slide is really the Silliman University cafeteria goes plastic free. We don't anymore sell products that are in bottles, single use, those that are not reusable. So we say, if you cannot reuse it, refuse buying that particular item in a particular container. So breaking free from plastic is actually a call for action, because oftentimes what we may think, how we may feel about the environment can always be at some abstract or ideational level. But once we go into a movement like break free from plastics, then you can see a tangible action made by students when they come with their cloth bags, or when they use reusable bottle containers and the like. Thus, from our own journey, from our own experience, we find that it helps to have a person who is part of the committee that looks into our zero waste activities, and one who knows the science behind the no to plastic movement. We also need to have an advocate from the top administration. So from the top down, from bottom up, we have environmental champions who can really be our partners in this advocacy. We also need to formulate university-wide policies. So the policies that we formulated cover all the 3 divisions of the university, and everyone is seeing to it that those are followed to the letter. we also actively adopt the information education campaigns, and we build on existing resources. Like one really doesn't start from zero in the plastic free movement, because there are a number of students who really are so into it. There are a number of faculty members who are also into it, administrators and staff. So it's a matter of mobilizing them all and having a coherent framework so that everybody gets to do what we need to do. And in the next slide there, we have actually tried to sustain the efforts by recognizing initial achievements made by the different sectors and sharing the responsibility with as many environmental champions from the different units. As mentioned, the university is really a place that has so many stakeholders. We have those who live in residences, we have a dormitory, we have faculty living on campus. Thus, it's important that we are of one mind in this particular endeavor. Silliman University is by no means perfect in the way we do our plastic-free activity, but we also have initial successes and good ones at that, but we do not rest on the achievements that we have made in the past 8 to 10 months. We continue on with regular monitoring, with program assessment, and identifying areas for improvement so that we can make the break-free activity sustainable. So that is where Silliman University is right now. So if you visit our own website, we have our own social media groups, and in the website you can see the general principles and the guidelines that I mentioned for more information. So again, thank you for letting us share what are in place in our own campus. And I hope you will be able to visit us here at Silliman University in Dumaguete, Philippines. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Doc Betty, for sharing your journey with us. I was able to visit Silliman University last January, and I was very impressed with their cafeteria. They don't sell any junk food or anything packaged in multi-layer packaging anymore. They do their own, they make their own snacks, and everyone's free to bring their reusable containers for it. And every department is also on board, including their art department. They're also making infographics, engineering department. So we have 12 minutes left for questions, and we actually have one already. Hold on, I might forget to unmute Alex again. Okay, so a first question from Xuan from Vietnam. What are the roles of government in terms of issuing policies or regulations in implementing the plastic-free campus movement? Would you like to start, Doc Betty?
Okay, for the Philippines, we actually have our own Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and there are guidelines being set on not throwing away plastics just anywhere. But for those who have been to the Philippines, you can see that there is a divide between environmental policies, environmental laws, and the actual action taken by the citizens. So there's still more room for a university like Silliman to really continue on with training and advocacy, because we have strong and we have numerous laws and policies, but really there is a breakdown insofar as action is concerned.
Thanks, Doc Betty. Actually, for everyone, Silliman University's environmental policies are also available in their website if you'd like to have a reference on what you would like to implement in your campus. Alex, would you like to answer for the US?
Sure, yeah. And also I'll say, Doc Betty, that was really inspiring to see all the work that y'all are doing. The question of policy is definitely a really interesting one. I think from a strategic standpoint, probably some of the biggest gains that our movement will make over the next couple of years will be in the realm of broader policies. The more that we can be passing restrictions on the purchasing of disposable plastics and also requiring end source, like where does the material go, establishing that cities and towns, wherever you are, need to set up municipal collection for composting, need to restrict certain disposable products, is going to be a huge next step for our movement. I think the challenge that we have is that we have yet to truly model zero waste communities. And I think in many cases, we're going to start to see the flood of policy come as a result of the momentum that zero waste communities will build. So to give you an example, we work with a lot of college campuses that have accomplished things similar to what you've accomplished, Doc Betty. And I'm curious if you would say that this is similar to your experiences as well. What we see a lot in the campus communities is they've done a really good job controlling what they can control. So they've made it so that their entities are no longer selling the products that are causing contamination. And they've passed their own internal policies saying our vendors, the people who come to campus to sell food, like our staff members who purchase things, they have to follow these policies. But then students or visitors or parents or people who come to sporting events come to campus and bring trash from the outside. And in many cases, that has opened the floor for conversations for campus communities to turn to their broader, like to the city or town that they're in and say, we've been doing this, but now we're being responsible for paying for the trash that the areas around us are creating and dumping on us. And it's creating the political will for a bigger conversation. So Doc Betty, like I thought it was fascinating that you all, in the resources you shared, said part of your kind of policy is restricting people bringing this stuff to your campus. Yes, I think that's like the first step there. Yeah.
We do what we can, given the campus that we have. We are in a 64-hectare campus, and we have a number of residences because of the faculty members and staff who are here. We also have over a dozen dormitory facilities. So no one can go in to campus if they bring groceries or food in plastic bags. So even our own guards will have to ensure that, they don't bring the plastic in. And everyone signs this particular commitment because, of course, we know we are a campus by the sea. We know that out there in the sea, many of these plastic bags actually end. You mentioned about maybe influencing those outside our own immediate community, like fast food chains now, because they know that our university doesn't allow bringing the vendors coming in with goods in plastic bags. Then now they are doing their best to have their food items delivered in paper bags, or having some other alternative ways of reusable containers. So in effect, taking the lead, and those in the community trying to follow suit. So now if you, let's say, have a food delivery, they know that they cannot go in if what they bring actually come in plastic bags.
Thank you, Alex and Doc Betty. For our next question, we have last two questions. What was the biggest challenge you encountered at the start of the implementation of the zero waste policy in Silliman? for Doc Betty, and how did you address it? And Alex, you can also answer this for your experience helping schools.
Well, the biggest challenge at first for the university, you know, the university is 118 years old. And we always say we are a campus that believes in good environmental programs. However, at the time when we inspect the bins, actually more than 80% of those bins are not properly used. So the challenge is really on the user of the bins. So we have to re-educate, retrain our own people so that they know what are the biodegradables, where it should go, or where the recyclables are and where that should go. And that's why we have a group that is very active in coming up with infographics so that it's easier for them to follow, you know, as to how do proper segregation. To me, the student body is quite active, and we have a critical mass of students who themselves are very strong in this advocacy. So to me, part of the success of this movement is really in having students who are fully on board and are very consistent. And even when we have events like Founders Day, they themselves, those in the student government, they make sure that all the vendors, third parties going in, will also follow our policies of not using plastics and having their own bins so that food waste can really be controlled. So it's the motivation and being one, and this time it also becomes, you know, for students to come in with containers that are not plastic, you know, it becomes a source of comparison, like a social comparison when they come in and they are considered as environmental champions. So everyone wants to be labeled an environmental champion.
So just to wrap us up here, I think that was a great answer from Doc Betty. So I'm gonna answer the question of like, how do I get started? For those of you that have asked that question. My advice is to first kind of recognize that there's a long road ahead, and also that whether you're a staff member or a student, we're starting in the middle of a conversation. So we're not necessarily, you know, the first people to have this conversation. We're entering into the direct middle of a very long path. So for me, I think the most important part of this work is the relationships that you build and how you first approach people. You're gonna be working with these people for years. So the first step is to figure out who your best allies are and start to build the process of discovery. Have meetings with people one-on-one and find out, what have you been working on? What has happened on this campus so far? What have you tried and hasn't worked? And begin the process of understanding kind of what people are currently working on and what they want to do. Eventually, what you want to get to is having a couple of people who you can work with to do visioning. And the reason why you want to do visioning is because what often happens in these conversations is it's really easy for staff members to feel blamed for the way that things are going wrong. And from my perspective, it's nobody's particular fault. It's a system problem. So in a lot of cases, you know, the director of dining, the director of facilities, the director of you name it, is not necessarily the one who is at fault for the flaws in the campus system. All of those individuals need to come together and build a vision for a future system that they would eventually build into and work into. So they need policies that apply to them and everybody else around them. They need systems that apply to them and everybody else around them. They need new bins that apply to them and everybody else around them. And so it's not necessarily their job to implement that for their silo. They have to work with like 5 or 10 other silos to collectively move forward. And so your role can be to facilitate that, to help them come together and build a bigger vision for what their long-term solution will be. And in many cases, that's going to require working with administration and getting all of them to agree to a vision and then sharing that vision with administration, like a pitch, a proposal to bigger administration that says, in 5 years, we want to do this, and we want all of us to work together to make that happen. So your job is to build collaboration and facilitate communication among multiple people.
Thanks, Alex. And thank you for answering our questions. Thank you as well, Doc Betty. So it is now 5 p.m. here in Manila. Thank you, Alex, again for staying up for us. It's been very insightful. Thank you as well, Doc Betty, for lending us your time to talk about your journey. For those who still have questions, I will be emailing you and we'll try to answer your questions to my best capacity. But for now, we will have to wrap up the session. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
See you again for the next ones.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, Alex. Thank you.
Night, thanks.